Serious cancer survivors of Reddit, when did you first notice something was wrong? I had uterine cancer. I was weak for a long time, but I had just had my son a few months before, so I thought it was just healing after a C-section. I was bleeding a lot. I remember calling my mom and asking her to pick me up some pads and her asking me why more. I just got some last week. That's when I told her I'd been bleeding for 3 months. She made me call my doctor who couldn't get me in for another 6 weeks. My mom did not agree with that at all. She called her gynecologist, told them what was going on, and they got me in that day. After numerous tests, blood work, a DNC, I was told I had endometriosis. After they did a DNC to clean the blood, they did an biopsy and found the cancer. The doctor was amazed that I was able to get pregnant and could not image how I carried my son full term. He was very pissed that the on-call doctor who did my C-section didn't catch anything. I remember after the biopsy came back, he came into the room and said very bluntly, "You have cancer. Now you have 2 options. We can treat it with chemo and radiation and hope for the best, or we can do a complete hysterectomy and get it all at once." I just looked at him and told him to cut that S***T out of me. So 14 years later, cancer free, and I've been here to raise my kids. First bout with cancer was my brain tumor. I was having a business meeting with a contractor who was doing some graphic design work for my company. I'd had a few brain farts over the last couple of months, where I'd been trying to say a word, but just couldn't come up with it. I brushed them off as tip of my tongue type brain farts and ignored them. In this meeting I got stuck on the word "an." I figured this is ridiculous and forced it, but what came out was an and I don't remember anything after that other than waking up in the hospital. Turns out I had an oligodendroglioma which had been pressing up against my speech center and had grown to the point where it was screwing with my ability to talk. It's incredibly rare, 4% of all brain tumors, and only found in men in their 40s. It's also almost never diagnosed until you have a seizure, which is what happened in the meeting. Apparently the contractor was traumatized as I fell out my chair and thrashed on the floor. Ambulances came, etc. I woke up on a gurney with an doc calmly telling me that the CAT scan had found a golf ball sized lump in my brain that wasn't supposed to be there, and that I should probably go see an oncologist about that. That was over a decade ago. Oligodendrogliomas respond well to resection, chemo and radiation treatment, and I've been fine ever since. The second bout was this year, when a polyp found during a routine colonoscopy had cancerous material in it, and they decided to do a lower colon resection in an abundance of caution. Turns out one of the 20+ lymph nodes they removed along with the bottom 10 of my colon had some cancer in it, so I spent about 12 weeks this summer on a much more intensive course of chemotherapy than my brain tumor. That was a nasty ride, but I should be fine now. F***K cancer. When I was walking to class one day in high school, I'm now 23, and my legs just gave out, and I collapsed to the floor. Had to have a random student walking by help me to my feet, and even then I wasn't stable. I had been having weird symptoms for the month prior, but that was the one thing that really made me think that something was wrong. Turned out to be a rare type of bone marrow cancer called Poem syndrome that only few other adolescents have ever had. At least that's what my doctors have told me. Unfortunately I've recently relapsed, but recent blood work has been looking really good, so hopefully I'm back in remission soon. Invasive malignant melanoma, diagnosed and removed at 29. I noticed a dark mole on my upper arm/shoulder area that wasn't there before. Over the next year it doubled in size, but was still smaller than what they tell you to look for. I offhand asked my dermatologist to check it, and he says he would, but that it wouldn't be anything. It was. I was considered stage 2, although from what I hear stages are an outdated way of classifying melanoma. I'm okay now. Had a precancerous mole removed about a year after the cancer, but I get checked regularly. You know you best. If something seems off, be your own advocate and get it checked. Just over a year ago I had been increasingly tired and fatigued over a period of 6 months. I had also been dealing with lower leg swelling, to the point that I could barely wear shoes. I had been out with my mom and was so out of breath I couldn't walk the 100 yards or so into a grocery store. I was admitted to the hospital with a hemoglobin of 4 and incredibly low thyroid levels. Fast forward a day or two, and I start with what can only be described, without being gross, as an incredibly irregular period. I was scheduled for a uterine biopsy a few weeks after discharge, and was found to have endometrial cancer. We attempted the conservative course of treatment as I'm only 32, and have not had kids yet. This was all fine, and well until January when 2 masses were found in my uterine wall. Fast forward 2 months and an MRI shows that even on hormone suppression therapy, the masses were growing. I had a complete hysterectomy on March 29th of this year. One of the masses was 70% through the uterine wall. Luckily my lymph nodes were clear and I didn't need chemo or radiation. Felt like S***T all the time. Fatigued constantly and losing my physical strength. Finally went to my family doctor who said it was just aging. Went for a second opinion, and they found high cancer markers in my blood test. Spent the next few months going back and forth to various specialists while they tried to pinpoint it. Finally turned out to be both lymphatic and testicular cancer. I was very lucky. I lost 6 lymph nodes and a treacherous left testicle, and came out of it clean, after having to do very little treatment. But with what I went through, and what I spent, I have a new respect for people who survive more severe forms of cancer. Testicular cancer, 20 years old for me. It was rather obvious, lots of pain in my abdomen, and one of the boys was about 4x the size of the other. That being said, usually it isn't that obvious, so guys always remember to check your junk in the shower. I had an inguinal orchiectomy, and I'm currently going through chemo. I was studying in grad school looking down and reading frequently when I began to feel vague neck discomfort. I ignored it for a few weeks, but told my then girlfriend. Then I noticed an asymmetrical bulge in my neck. I wanted to blow it off until our year-long finals were over, but my girlfriend insisted I get checked out. It was thyroid cancer. I went through 2 surgeries and radiation therapy, but fortunately I've been cancer-free for 5 years now. I wish I had a better answer. I was pregnant for the first time, 1999, and my gut was relentless, telling me something wasn't right. I didn't feel right. I brushed a lot of it off as pregnancy hormones, but something just wasn't right. It caused sleep loss and anxiety. I went to her at 9 weeks and was told I had a UT. Now as a midwifery student my bacterial load was low enough that I know I didn't have a UT. Back around 5 weeks, again to my doctor at 12 and 14. Ed had a scan at 5 weeks, and it was normal. Finally at 18 weeks I went into her again, because I couldn't shake this feeling of impending doom. I got a resident for the first time and she just said that sometimes first time moms need to see their babies to shake worries. She sent me for an anatomy scan. Dead baby, massive snowstorm tissue. It was a molar pregnancy, placenta was massive, and riddled with mutations. I was scheduled for a D&C. My follow-up a month later was 5 minutes with an OB who told me it wasn't like the baby was term, I could have more babies, I should wait a year. Within days the sense of dread crept back. 3 months later I joined an online support group for women who had molar pregnancies, and found out I should have had twice weekly blood work and follow-up scans to make sure there was no retained placenta tissue. By then the stuff missed in DC had taken over and metastasized. I'm lucky I found those women. They saved my life and my GP filed a formal complaint against the incompetent OB that we trusted to do my care. Ewing's sarcoma, diagnosed at age 12. The first time I remember noticing it was during a volleyball game. I spiked and landed and felt a sharp pain in my left thigh. I ignored it and it would bother me on and off for a few months. I was trying not to let my parents worry because my older sister has CF and was going through a rough patch. I was limping most of the time, but occasionally it wouldn't hurt at all. One day I was walking downstairs at school, and as I took a step I was blinded by pain, screamed and collapsed. By the time my mom got to school to pick me up it was barely a lake, but she said we should get X-rays just in case. This was around 5 months after the volleyball pain. And, cancer. I started treatment immediately. 13 months of chemo, 100 nights in hospital, 2 years of physical therapy to lose my limp. Probably when my stomach was starting to hurt extremely ****king bad. I had lymphoma at the age of 10, and I was taken to the emergency room after I was vomiting blood because there was nothing else in my stomach. The day before, the nurse sent me home from school because of my extreme stomach pains. Luckily we caught it very early so it wasn't too bad, but it sure as hell wasn't fun. Though oddly enough, even though I had cancer I never once thought about myself dying in the hospital. Maybe because I was so young, but I just simply enjoyed my time by playing on those box they had in there and the gifts I was given. I also watched Jumanji maybe 20 times over. Edit. It's been about 6 years since I've been free. I'm in my junior year of high school in the IB program and will be turning 17 in 2 months. I didn't know there was anything wrong, no symptoms. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer through routine screening. I had missed one due to being out of the country. Luckily it was spotted early enough that I got away with just having a total hysterectomy, cervix, uterus and tubes removed. I've been left with the lingering fear that they missed a bit somewhere and it'll reoccur, and a messed up bowel/GI situation. But at least my ovaries are still working **** and I'm not dead***. Ladies, get your regular checkups. A smear test is far less uncomfortable or embarrassing than having the world and its wife all up in your nethers trying to rid you of cancer. Randomly ended up so sick I was bedbound for a month. Got every test for the flu/cold/viruses they could think of. Ended up getting an ultrasound on my stomach. They saw a mass while doing so and also scanned my pelvic area. Turned out to be ovarian cancer, but luckily for me, it was contained in the football-sized tumor attached to my right ovary, which I obviously didn't know was there. Month later I was cut open, had it removed. -1 ovary in the constant fear it'll come back later, and I'm cancer free. For now. All leukemia diagnosed age 18. Was working at a construction supply yard at the time and was having to call out sick all the time. Mind you, I was no stranger to hard work, and I was usually the kind of person who went to the doctor maybe once a year for the flu/cold. I started dropping weight and thought that it must just be from the job. The thing that began to concern me was the lack of muscle that I was building in place and how weak I felt all the time. Got laid off because I had just been hired on for summer help, but kept getting seemingly worse. Dad decided to have some blood work run, and the lab tech realized I was grossly anemic and had a huge amount of white blood cells. I was in the hospital and diagnosed within 72 hours. Hodgkin's lymphoma. Age 30. What's that lump on your neck? Brain tumor. Diagnosed at 22. But I was asymptomatic. I had no headaches, no blurred vision, no change in personality, just weight gain. Had I not been a vain bugger and wanting a quick pill to sort it out I would never have gone to the doc and had a blood test. My bloods came back all highly irregular. Fast forward 6 months of tests, brain tumor. I was scratching my balls and felt a hard knot. Froze for like 10 seconds, panicking internally, thinking it's definitely cancer, then remembered that cancer is actually pretty rare and it's far more likely to just be a cyst or something. Went to the doctor anyway, because I'm not an idiot. It was cancer. Edit to answer some questions, since I can't get to everyone individually. Also please feel free to PM me if you have further questions, need advice or just want to talk about it. Asterisk I did not get to keep the ball. They have to look at it under a microscope to determine the specific type of cancer and for that they usually slice it up a bit so there wouldn't have been much to keep anyway. Asterisk the knot was rock hard and attached to the testicle inside the sac and maybe a tiny bit more sensitive than the testicle normally is. Otherwise completely painless, but your mileage may vary. In some cases the tumor will start growing inside the testicle causing it to swell. In others the testicle might even shrink. If it's soft and squishy it's probably not cancer, but still have it checked if you're worried. A simple ultrasound can determine if it's a solid tumor and requires further attention. Asterisk if it comes and goes it's also most likely not cancer. Cancer will generally only get bigger without treatment. Asterisk they do offer you a prosthetic replacement, although I refused, because I heard it can be uncomfortable in some situations and I don't notice a difference anyway. Asterisk you can still have sex with one ball. The remaining testicle takes up the workload of the removed one. I'm not infertile, and don't have testosterone problems, but that can happen in some cases. Asterisk I was 21 when first diagnosed, and 22 when I relapsed. Asterisk treatment didn't cost me anything, because I live in a country with universal healthcare. Asterisk checking regularly is good, but don't overdo it. Generally once a month is enough. Asterisk testicular cancer asterisk is asterisk rare as it accounts for roughly 0.51% of male cancers. I had no symptoms. Instead I was assaulted while at work, and due to some injuries gained while defending myself, had to report to urgent care for an X-ray on my arm/shoulder. They spotted the anticipated injury. They also spotted a large, dark asterisk UN asterisk ANTICIPATED mass in my chest. Several blood tests, expensive scans, and even more expensive biopsies later, blessed with the news that, yay, I had fairly advanced Hodgkin's lymphoma, with a bulky mediastinal tumor. I was diagnosed with a soft tissue sarcoma about 2 years ago. I was in the shower one day, and I was putting soap on my leg, when I noticed a lump on my left groin about the size of half a ping pong ball. I was surprised I hadn't noticed it before because of its size. It felt very smooth, and very firm on touching. It wasn't causing me any pain either, it was just there. I initially thought that it was something minor, so I decided to give it a week to see if it would go away. A week later, it was still there, so I decided to go get it checked out. The doctors first performed an ultrasound, but the reports were inconclusive, so they just put me into general surgery to do a biopsy on the lump. 2 weeks after the surgery, the reports came back, and they confirmed that it was a high-grade cancerous tumor, which shocked me to the core. I then spent the next month getting a bunch of tests done, like CT scans, an MRI of my brain, PET scans and a bone marrow biopsy to see if it had spread anywhere, and luckily, the tumor was still localized in my leg. So all I needed was one more surgery in the same area as before to get rid of the remaining cancer cells. I feel extremely fortunate that I was able to get away without needing chemotherapy or radiation. The only downside was that it took me about a month after the surgery before I could walk normally. It's been 2 years since that happened. I still go for follow-up scans, and they've all been clean ever since. There are no indicators that this thing should come back anytime soon or maybe even ever. I have had cancer twice. Both times testicular cancer. Each time was independent from one another. First time was 4 years ago. It was a rare form of testicular cancer, not actually in the testicles. By the time it was found, it had spread to the pancreas, liver, and lungs. I had been very sick for weeks, and near the diagnosis pretty much vomiting all day and night, unable to eat and sleep. So you could say I noticed early on when I was sick more than the usual fever duration, but had no idea what it was until doctors figured it out. Luckily, treatment was effective, so about 4 months later I was back up and running. Only chemo, no operation needed. Second time happened just a few months ago, when I noticed one of my testicles being slightly sore. Didn't feel out of the ordinary, but decided to have it checked. Doctor didn't feel anything, but because of my history, decided to have it scanned. Early stage cancer, surgery did the job. Back up and running again, no chemo needed this time around. Today I'm 27 years. Blessed with a 1-year-old son and a loving wife. Life is good after all. General advice: if you ever have a suspicion, do yourself a favor and have it checked. Catch it early on, and not only do you improve your chances of surviving, you also get ease of mind. I had been feeling a vague wrongness that I couldn't define or explain for a few months. I was in a musical, and it was hard to memorize lines, which was unusual. One day I had a stabbing headache that made me scream. I had severe migraines for 20 years, but this was different. Took a shower to try to help the pain, and started tilting to the left over and over. I knew instantly it was a brain tumor, and I was right. Over the course of 1 week I went from starring in a musical to needing a walker, losing the ability to type, and began losing my words when talking. Could not hold or carry anything with my left hand. Diagnosed B-cell lymphoma in my brain in September 2016. Given 2 months to live without treatment. 10 rounds chemo. Now cancer free. Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 3B, as bad as it gets before spreading. Well, I noticed something was off, because I had back pains, a cough, a small lump under my arm, and I was sweating a lot in my sleep. I knew something was really wrong. When the lump got bigger I couldn't walk far, and I started getting migraines, induced by a tumor of sorts that was pushing onto an artery. My local GP kept saying it was nothing, and probably just a kidney infection. Anyway, 3 months later a doctor in Sheffield told me I need to be referred to hospital in hematology. They threatened my GP to force them to file the referral, and I was diagnosed with cancer. 9 months after that I was declared cancer free. That was 6 years ago. Got a few small lesions on my arm, maybe the size of a thumbtack, if not a little smaller. Doctors dismissed it as normal for skin, so went about life as usual. 2 weeks later 3 to 4 lesions had turned into 8 and starting appearing more frequently. Eventually convinced a GP for a dermo referral and a subsequent biopsy. Was diagnosed with Langerhans cell histiocytosis about 4 months after the initial GP visit, with it localized to the skin and brain. Having round 12 of chemo as I type, which is going well. 3 more to go. Check your skin for lumps, bumps, and changes in pigmentation regularly. I had NHL. I felt normal and just one night was checking my vocal cords thinking back about my singing days, and while I was feeling my neck fats, when I noticed the hardness in my right neck. I thought nothing much of it at first until the lump grew noticeably bigger. Even after the first round of checks the doctors found nothing out of the ordinary in terms of blood cell count and stuff like that, until my ear nose throat specialist removed it after surgery. By then it was at stage 2, in my head and chest, and we had to act quick. I didn't. My mom got lung cancer April 2006, and month later my GF, who was in med school at the time, now wife and a neurologist, asked if I have ever been checked for cancer. I said no, so she asked me to lie down. She searched from neck down, and once she got between my legs her face changed. She found a testicular cancer. It was in so early stage that it was easy to treat. Surgery and 6 weeks chemo, and that was it. Still, she most likely saved my life. Back in 2009 I got pneumonia 3 times in about 4 months. My GP did not like that, so lots of blood tests later I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma stage 4. It's a blood cancer with no cure. 2 bone marrow transplants, and gallons of chemo. 9 years later I'm still fighting the good fight. I broke my back lifting my dog into the car. Turns out it was stage 4 prostate cancer that had spread to my bones and weakened my skeleton. Age 39, it has taken everything from me already and will soon take my life. Was losing weight and had a painless lump in my throat that I could only feel when swallowing. I at the time thought it was stress as I was working and also caring for my GF who had brain cancer. When she passed I went to get checked out, and a few visits more, and a biopsy found that I had a squamous cell throat cancer. Radiation therapy and 2 courses of chemo. I'm 2 years in remission. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.